All right, everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the next hour of the Phys Ed Summit 2017. We're glad that you could be with us right now at the hour of 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for joining us. We are very humbled that you could partake in our online digital conference that had just a great day, a lot of engagement, a lot of different sessions, and it's been a lot of fun. So we have a panel here, and I won't talk a whole lot because I think we want to get into some conversations, but I'm going to hand it over here to Dr. Harvey to introduce himself and kind of get us going. Go ahead, Dr. Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. So we've put a panel together to look at the topic of social media and why physical educators use social media. So we're going to focus mainly on Twitter and Voxer. I work now at Ohio University here in the United States. I'm formerly from England. So we're going to go through about 8 questions if we have time for all of them. If you're on the Tozzle and you want to ask specific questions as we go through, just pop them onto the Tozzle and we will... if you want to just pop your name and if you're listening, and your name and where you're working and what your interest is in terms of social media, that would be great as well.
Dr. Harvey, I also think it'd be great. So can our panel guests quickly just introduce yourself real quick here? Sam, do you want to start us off?
Sure. My name's Samuel Carnes. I'm in Houston, Texas. Weathering the storms, Spring Branch ISD. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Wellness.
Evan.
Oh, hi, I'm Evan Godsiff. I'm in Korea. I teach middle school this year, so 7th and 9th graders.
Michael.
Mike.
My name is Mike Martinez. I'm a high school phys ed teacher in East Harlem, New York City, teaching 9th and 11th grade this year.
I'll go. My name is Sarah Gietschier-Hartman. I teach middle school in St. Louis, Missouri. So this year I have 6th and 8th grade phys ed.
So what we're going to do is just go through the questions. It's kind of like an open forum. I believe that this was going to be a little bit more valuable than doing a PowerPoint presentation, because we can have a conversation that we feel is going to be valuable to physical educators around the world about particularly a group of what I would see in the room here as innovators, of people who've been on social media for quite a while. And, we can have a conversation and talk about some of the benefits and some of the, challenges that are still out there for using social media in terms of Twitter and Voxer. So I'm just going to share my screen here and hopefully share, and I will bring up the this presentation, and I need to do the present tab. So is that working for everyone?
Yes, it looks great.
Yeah. Sorry I missed you off there, Colin, but so we've done the introduction. So question 1 is having to talk about how did you get into social media, and we can do the second part of this question after if need be. But how did you get into Twitter, and if you use Voxer, how did you get into to Voxer? So anyone want to kick us off? Give us a time scale and how long you've been on there and what you've been using it for, etc.
Yeah, I can start. I had an educator in our district that was really into Twitter, and when she said, you need to get on Twitter, it's great PD, I had the common perception a lot of people do that, isn't that just for following celebrities, or I didn't get what Twitter was. It was just sort of a thing, right? And she was really into it. So I reluctantly signed up, and then when I signed up, the first day I followed like a whole bunch of people that she followed, and then I got like banned from Twitter for aggressively following. I must have seemed like a robot or something, or I got this message. So don't follow 1,000 people the first day you sign up. And then for Voxer, I actually started a first Voxer group with Colin, who was here. Of course, Colin became too popular and didn't have time for our Voxer group after that, as he had too many projects going on. But I can't even remember. We must have learned about Voxer from Twitter. And so then I have a couple of Voxer groups, we'll talk more later, that we very frequently chat with. So anyway, what's your story, guys?
I guess I'll go next if you don't mind, because it kind of makes sense since Evan went. So as I introduced Evan to Voxer, Evan introduced me to Twitter, and I was very, very hesitant. I think it was 2014 at the Northwest District or the Northwest Children's Conference, and Evan's like, "Hey, you should check out Twitter." I was like, "No, I don't think I want to do that." And I got on, and I was like, "No way. There's like valuable content on here, and it's not just what Evan was describing, celebrities, just nonsense." And then there was people. I felt like I found my tribe, to be honest. Like everybody that was trying to push, or a lot of people that were trying to push the profession forward were all there. They were all trying to be innovative. They were trying to make a difference in their school and everything. Everyone was willing to share in open source, for the most part, all of their things, which was just another thing that I was like, wow, I have 1,000 resources before my eyes that I just unlocked this door to all these resources. And from there, I just got more and more involved with Phys Pedagogy and some more stuff with Shape America. But in the meantime, yeah, Evan and I and a couple other teachers had a morning Voxer group that we had started. Adam Howell actually, I think, introduced me to Voxer. And then from that, I introduced Evan and a few other teachers to it. So it just kind of spread, like these social media sources, they just kind of spread like wildflower. And then, yeah, Evan and I and Steve and Ryan, Steve Johnson and Ryan from Washington, from Spokane, Weisner, it was fun. We were just talking about our daily struggles and connecting in that point. So it's changed my career. It's changed the way that my whole network and my whole support. So there's a little brief, maybe long social media journey for me.
So who's next?
I can go next. My, I guess, journey in social media kind of echoes Evan's and Colin's a little bit. I stumbled onto Voxer probably about 9 years ago. I think Voxer had just become a thing. And at the time, I thought it was just a way for people to send me annoying audio messages that I didn't really want or need to listen to. It hadn't really taken over the professional realm just yet, but probably about a year ago. So I stopped using Voxer then, but about a year ago, two friends turned me on to Twitter, similar to what Evan was saying, that you don't have to follow Kardashians or anything like that. It's all phys ed people sharing lessons and activities and assessment tools and videos. And I reluctantly went on, and again, similar to Evan and what Colin was saying, I feel like I found like a pot of gold of nonstop professional development. It was every single day on my commute, or during a prep, I could just scroll through Twitter for a few minutes and always at least find one example of something that I could use in almost immediately in my everyday practice. So I've been on it almost nonstop every single day. For sure, I go on at least once a day and just kind of scroll through and see what people are sharing. I still can't believe that like the phys ed universe is that big and generous and awesome, and just wanting to share free materials with everyone who's out there. It really truly is an online family of people who just want great education to be taking place all over the country, all over the world. So I'm thrilled to be chatting with someone from Korea right now who can share, goodness on Twitter with us. So happy 1 year anniversary to me.
Sam?
Sure. So our district did a big push probably 4 or 5 years ago with something called the 11 Tools, and they were trying to get people into technology. So it's interesting because I guess, for lack of a better word, some of us younger folks, we were kind of embraced that whole 11 Tools and jumped in with it with both feet. And it was an opportunity. And I'd have to say, to be honest, after we joined the 11 Tools, I didn't know a whole lot about the phys ed community. And so kind of picking up on that hashtag later on allowed me to continue to go on that journey probably a year and a half later, after we had already set up those tools. And so through the Twitter world has allowed me to kind of connect with people from all over the world. As Mike mentioned earlier, just with people from different countries to see how they're doing things and best practices within the sphere of influence of where they have. And I'd say probably within the last 2 years for Voxer, I was turned on to Voxer from somebody on Twitter. It might have been Jorge. I can't remember exactly. who got me connected to it. But once I got a chance to join that, it was an opportunity to go beyond 140 characters and really connect with just different professionals, again, from around the world. And so for the last couple years through Voxer, we've been pushing our departments, and we have a department of about 150 physical educators at elementary, middle, and high school. And so we've really been pushing Voxer groups and Twitter chats and just really trying to get our folks engaged, because we know, even in Houston, you know, a lot of our knowledge, there's so much knowledge that's out there beyond just where we're at. And so Twitter and Voxer has allowed us to connect our folks and share our best practices, but just continue collaboration and growing the physical education community and health community.
Okay, so I'll share my story. Sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. So I joined Twitter 4 years ago. I had a last chance opportunity to go to this free PD, and you had to sign up for the sessions ahead of time. And since I wasn't unable to do that, the only session left to go to was learning how to use Twitter for professional development. And I was like, okay. And within like 10 minutes of attending the session, I was completely hooked. And I think one of the biggest things that happened for me is that I started to network with teachers right away from the get-go. And within just a few short months, I was already on my way traveling from St. Louis, Missouri, where I live, up to Winnipeg in Manitoba to attend the PHE Canada National Convention, just because of Twitter connections and my exposure to, you know, what was going on in other parts of the world. And so I also use Voxer. But I primarily use Voxer to just do phys-edagogy and phys ed summit related things, and just to catch up with those people, like in our own side chats about, you know, just what's going on in our actual regular non-PE lives. I've tried to do the Voxer groups, but it's been too overwhelming for me. So I just exclusively use it for friends and phys-edagogy stuff.
Great. You know, if the people who got referred, was there anything like that was specifically motivating for you to actually join, or was it only when you kind of had that exposure that you were then motivated? So like in Sarah's example there. Anyone?
I think it's kind of like what Colin was saying, discovering this, like, well, everyone said that, discovering this sort of, you know, tribe or group or whatever you want to call it, for Twitter, of just sort of like daily inspiration and encouragement, right? But I can piggyback on what Sarah's saying about Voxer. I find Voxer really helpful with, like, I have 1 or 2 friends that I speak with every day, and we have a little group and we reflect that way. But the big giant groups have benefit for, sometimes I'll pose a question and there's so many good resources in there that people can respond, but I can't follow along to the big giant group ones. It's just a little bit too much. So then it kind of makes sense in life too. Like, you build relationships. I mean, I think I've met Ryan once in real life, but we talk every day on Voxer, and just so we've built this trust where, like, you know, we can critique each other's lessons, and we can give honest feedback, and we can say, like, should you be doing that? And as a teacher on an island in an elementary school, most of the time we just haven't had that before. And so Voxer especially provides that way to get a lot of really good feedback. And now we can share videos. I'll often video in my class and show them, and they get like a little taste of what's going on, and they can give feedback on it. So
for me, I think what was convincing is that I went to this session, you know, and the purpose was to use Twitter for professional development. And instead of telling us all the benefits first, the presenter was like, okay, we're going to all get a Twitter handle. And so we just did it. And so for me, it was like just this buy-in thing. It was like, you know, you're presenting this information, I'm taking it in. Like, what am I going to do? Just sit there and like not participate? So I was just all in from that point. You know, and like to just chime into what Evan was saying, like with the Voxer thing, one of the things that we do to streamline our conversations and keep them organized with phys-edagogy is that we alternate between text and audio messages. So for example, if I have something to say to Colin, but I know the entire group would benefit from hearing it, I type the word Colin, and then I talk into my phone and say what I need to say to Colin. So if you've missed 80 Voxes, which happens on like really busy days today, you can scroll through your phone and see what you've missed. That type of moderation and organization isn't going to happen when people are constantly joining and leaving all these various Voxer groups. If it had that type of organization, I would be much more likely to participate.
I want to chime in too. I think I would also agree with that, and that's kind of what we were sharing earlier. In our department, like I said, we have about 150 people. But like, for example, last year we created a group specifically for novice +1 teachers, and that allowed us to provide them kind of 24/7 support, because they'll send us emails, but usually we can't get back to them within the time that they need an answer. And so in creating this chat group, and we have multiple ones within our own organization. So Novice +1 is just an example of one, but we also have health educators as well, which is kind of our middle school and high school teachers. And so for us, we kind of organize it like that. So that way we can get to those different groups and offer them support. But then also realizing that we don't always have to be the expert at the table, because there's a lot of professionals in our department that know the answers. And so Voxer kind of served as a tool to allow us to connect with everybody in the department and cross curriculum as well. One of the things that we're trying to develop now is, for example, I'm trying to get my superintendent to hop in on one of our virtual PDs. So we're actually utilizing Voxer as a tool to provide 2 virtual meetings for a group called our Health Ambassadors, which is kind of the work site health ambassadors that promote health and wellness at the campus. And so I have 2 in-person meetings, but then I hold 2 virtual meetings utilizing this tool, and it allows me to have a dialogue between all of these folks and provide them support kind of 24/7 throughout the year. So that's kind of where I learned from Voxer, was to organize the different chat groups for our department and for our district. Again, just trying to get other people to unite sectors across the district. So that way everybody kind of breaks out of their silos, because we have content directors at different levels for science, math. And again, it just allows for collaboration or organic collaboration to take place.
And I guess to go back to Dr. Harvey's original question he just asked a second ago about, did it take us to get convinced by that person, or do we have to experience it? And I guess to a certain extent, I would say that Evan kind of convinced me enough to check it out, at least make me interested enough to look. But I definitely was not completely sold out until I was able to be kind of immersed in the online network that Team Phys Ed is, and how they support each other. So I would definitely, as far as the other thing, I would definitely echo everyone's thoughts about Voxer. I think that we're all busy individuals, and I think that, like all tools, I think Voxer has its limiting factors and its pros. Collaboration is a great pro for Voxer, especially and specifically in small groups, or groups that have norms, like Sarah was describing, where we set some guidelines and make sure that we follow those as a group. Because if you have 100 people, like 100 people in a group, and everyone just talks, that it's difficult to manage time to be successful while that's going on. At least that was my experience. And there's people that really enjoy that, and it's worked out well for them. So I figure if I want I want to check out some professional development or resources, I usually find that on Twitter. But if I want to collaborate, or if I want to reflect, I can do that on Voxer.
Stephen, some people in the TASL right now are also discussing that they use Facebook. And the Facebook groups that are available in order to connect with other PE teachers. And Bob Knipe, he said something I thought was really cool to share. He said that, being a member of all this social media reminds him that he is not weird because he likes PE or loves PE.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, I'm not on Facebook. I haven't used it. When I did the survey, a couple of interesting things to throw in there are, most of the teachers that responded to the survey had been on Twitter for quite a while, and the biggest proportion of them. But most people had been on Twitter just for general things, and then they said that more recently they'd been on Twitter and using it professionally. But most of the teachers were older as well, and they were a little bit more experienced. So, this notion of trying to get on there to share ideas potentially, or make sure that, what you're doing in class doesn't become dull for the, students, was obviously a feature of what was going on. We also asked the teachers about other tools that they use, and Facebook was one of the ones that they used predominantly, other than other than Twitter. Voxer wasn't so much actually used, but I've seen it, anecdotally become a tool that people are using more and more. And obviously I've been engaged in it as well. So that's why we're trying to focus. My colleague, Dr. Carpenter, who's on the next session, he's also he's got a paper that's going to come out on why educators use Voxer. So that'll be an interesting paper for, the phys ed community to get a read of. So the next question was just related to, and you might have covered this when I was off, so sorry, your primary reason for using social media professionally. So some of the research suggests that we don't just use it for professional development, but we use it for communication, we use it for teaching. So I don't know if people have had different experiences of why you use social media other than, just trying to get resources for class and things like that.
I think there's definitely two different sides for me using social media. It's a very easy way as a teacher to keep in touch with families, to post assignments for students, to have them research videos or articles that I want them to access, and give them one central point to access information instead of scouring the internet looking for it on their own. But again, from the selfish standpoint, I think it's great. If you're someone who loves going to conferences, but maybe can only go to one conference a year or a local and then a national conference. These are like almost mini conferences that take place every single day. Again, as so many people have pointed out already, you're getting information from literally all over the world, 24 hours a day. You can pick and choose the parts that you like. If you see something that's not your level, you can, collaborate with that person to figure out how to either ramp it up or scale it down to fit your wants and needs. But it's a way of just getting nonstop information on so many different levels. I think is the greatest benefit I've seen so far from it.
Yeah, and there is some stuff about back channeling. So this notion of people being at conferences. So we see all these state conferences in phys ed, and there's people there and taking pictures and sharing what's going on. But you're not actually in the room, but you kind of get a sense of the stuff that's being presented. So that back channeling is another way that people use Twitter, I guess. So I don't know if that's the same for one or two of you other people in the room here.
Yeah, I would say for example, this was a more recent example, but the National P Institute, my colleague Darlene Evans got to go. And so we kind of had to divide and conquer, kind of split that up budget wise. And so I was able to check in on the keynote speakers, not all of the sessions, but it was an opportunity for me to be there, but not really be there and still stay connected. I definitely would say as social media would help us to continue to be lifelong learners. I know for me, that's how I stay up with the kind of the newest things that are coming out, but obviously being cognizant of you can't use everything that's new that's out there, but it at least helps you to stay abreast of what's happening out there in the rest of the world and apply that to your practices. And then we kind of hit on this earlier. It was just a great opportunity to collaborate and then share those practices back with my teachers. Another example, I think Andy Horn posted a hydration rap. And so we stuck that straight into the Voxer chat group to our health physical educators, not physical educators, but our health educators. And they were able to kind of utilize that as a tool in their class. But again, they wouldn't have gotten that if we didn't provide that connection to them. And so the ultimate goal is to eventually get them to be searching that stuff out and not us still being the middle person that connects them, because social media they don't need us to be the middle person. They can find opportunities like that, but we just have to kind of, I guess, grow them into that, because we do meet a lot of barriers where there's some people who are afraid of social media, don't want to jump into it, not sure or insecure in terms of asking questions. And so I know as a department, we try to break those barriers down by providing opportunities for professional development, utilizing all of these tools so that they can grow accustomed to these types of tools that we're pushing in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the ways that I first really felt connected to the community was through PE chat. And I remember being very confused when I first, logged onto a PE chat and it was going too fast and I wasn't really sure. But it was a lot different experience than just scrolling through and looking and having someone, Joey or Andy or someone sort of an expert person providing their feedback at the same time, but then having 4 or 5 or 10 different other people chiming in. That was my sort of first introduction to the community. And I find that when I go on, I love commenting, and often sort of little organic chats will happen based on something that came up. And then of course there's the inspiration that just comes from seeing something encouraging, or seeing somebody saying, well, this is something I've tried and you've never even thought of it before. So kind of put it away for further research later. Another benefit for me is there seems to be a lot of people in higher ed and academics providing information that is not necessarily easy to access otherwise. And so I really think that helps the connection both ways. We kind of see the best, most current research, and then they sort of see like a boots on the ground as well. I don't know, Dr. Harvey, you could speak to that, but yeah, that's I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, go on, Colin. No, you go. It's totally fine.
Okay, I was just going to say how, thinking about your question, we definitely use social media for more than one thing. I think that a lot of people that are in a similar boat to the individuals in this group join for professional reasons, but I think a 21st century thing is all the lines are blurred in our lives, and kind of the byproduct of that is everyone has become really good friends through that experience, and now not only are we sharing like resources and professional development, but we're sharing our personal lives, and we're reflecting of each other, and we're helping build each other up with our daily work. So I think that that's just kind of the nature of social media and what it creates. And now that, when social media started, it was like college students, right? And now there's people from 100 years old to 10, and there's people doing all sorts of things. So, but I am really amazed at how professional, for the most part, the 30,000 phys ed teachers that are on Twitter really handle themselves. It's pretty cool to see.
So we don't need everyone to answer every question, and unless anyone's got a burning thing. But I want to move on to the next question. So, what do you know now about social media that you didn't when you first joined? So we can share this out amongst us, or if people feel compelled.
Well, I'll start. One of the things that I'm aware of, and I'm growing in my understanding, is as someone who's sort of a beginning mindfulness practitioner, or experimenting with meditation, I can see some of the potential drawbacks too of sort of always being on social media. So I'm trying to find the right balance. That's my own personal experience from not just scrolling through and taking time to separate as well. So I guess when I first started, I just was so enraptured and had just like every there's nothing bad about Twitter, it's awesome, it's amazing, to now trying to balance, or at least have a routine where I check it and don't just always feel tempted to go there. So that's just personally for me. I'm trying to figure out where the boundary is, and turning off notifications is something that I have done, so I go intentionally to check, but yeah, that's just part of my journey.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to put something up about challenges, but building off Evan's point, if we want to, if anyone has any chiming in on that to do, if there's been some sort of challenges about people feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, we can deal with that here. Anything?
I don't know if I necessarily feel overwhelmed. Sorry, Mike, I think you go next. Okay. So, but I guess, I don't know if that's answering the exact question you asked, Stephen, but the thing is that I've noticed is that it's a lot easier to have a collegial conversation and really push topics, teaching, pedagogy, assessment, whatever it is. If it's somebody on Twitter who you've already established a real face-to-face relationship with, or have already built a rapport with. And I've noticed a lot this summer that somebody will often pose a question in like a Facebook group, and they will get responses from a whole bunch of people. And if they don't necessarily agree with those responses, they get incredibly defensive. Then other people side with them, and it turns into this really heated argument between people that have never met each other before. But, if I were to write to, Mike, for example, and kind of push his thinking a little bit, I know that he wouldn't take it the wrong way. I know that he would be able to read through my tweet or read through my Facebook post and read through whatever tone other people might imply is happening or perceive that's happening. And that's a really difficult thing that I know a lot of us have been discussing right now. And it's kind of creating these big walls and barriers between people who are really trying to discuss best practices, whatever that is, and the people who I think are kind of getting left behind.
I want to actually agree with everything that Sarah just said. And to kind of tie in what Colin mentioned in his previous answer, I think if you're new to Twitter and even to a degree Facebook, it's very easy for lines to get blurred between groups of people who are new to this and are seeking information, those who are a little bit more experienced and are sharing information, and then those that are just kind of mixed up in between and are posting one professional post and then one personal post and mixing their personal feelings on everything from politics to pop culture to occasionally a professional post. So I think it's very important to be mindful of who you're following and why you're following them. And as Sarah was just mentioning, just being open-minded to the reason why you're on there. If someone doesn't agree with something that you sent, they don't have anything personal against you, because chances are they have not met you before, that we're all just trying to grow each other and grow ourselves as teachers. So I think it can be overwhelming if your lens isn't focused in the right place and you're not sure who you're talking to for what reasons. But I do think from what I've seen I'm a self-proclaimed dinosaur when it comes to technology. I'm very, very new to exploring Twitter and things like that. But I think if you're in it for the right reasons, the benefits far outweigh anything that you might feel overwhelmed or burnt out about, for sure.
So go on real quick, and then I'm going to move up, piggyback off Mike to the next question. So go on, Colin.
Sure. I was just going to say that social media is a fantastic thing. Kind of thinking about what Sarah was saying, though, like there's certain barriers and it's hard to drive best practices sometimes. And I think what we need to be careful of as practitioners and professionals is this world that we create that's perfect, where we only share what our best is. And when things don't go our best, we don't share that. And that's just a social media thing. It's like, there's been several people that talk about, you don't like take pictures of your kids when they're crying or when they throw fits. So we have to find a way to continue to kind of break down that barrier and find a way to continue to share what what best practices are, and be vulnerable with each other in a sense where we can be real and we can, move forward a little bit more. I'm done.
So no, it's totally fine. The point that Sarah made was a good one, and that links to the next question. So how do you build relationships on social media? And what I found, Andy Milne said this thing about, handshakes turn to hugs. When you have that face-to-face interaction with someone you've never met before, and you kind of already know them, or if you've met someone at a conference and then start following them, sometimes even to me, there's a bit of a different vibe with those people, because so I don't know if anyone's got any sort of thoughts on that.
Sure, I can start on that. Ironically, because someone like Colin Brooks, for example, who I was following, he's one of the first people I ended up following on Twitter, him and Matt Pomeroy, and I was following them for probably close to 7 or 8 months, and then ran into them at Shape Boston, and kind of felt like I was running into a lifelong friend, even though I realized they had no idea who I was probably. But again, for me, I'm a little bit more tentative and apprehensive to follow someone. I want to make sure that the things that they're following seem legit and seem genuine and seem authentic. So I think if you ever have a chance to then have those face-to-face meetings, it's much easier to kind of bridge those two together into one giant, beautiful relationship. I think if you meet someone and then follow them, it might have the adverse effect because you're not sure what they're sharing and might change your perception of who you knew them as. But that's my experience.
And then just also when you're talking, just think about Voxer as well, and whether that's any different or it's the same or whatever. So anyone else about relationships and meeting people? Colin?
So I think that social media always also has this and I don't know if we could count Voxers by like this celebrity type thing. When you see someone that has like 1,000 followers or whatever, you think they're like different than you. You think when you first get on, you think they're like, they must have it all figured out. The sense is they're no different. We're no different than anyone. Like, we're all just avid learners. And it's just someone that's been on there a little bit long, that's engaged in the community, as opposed to like this person that's like this incredible master teacher. And I think that's another thing that I've learned along the way that I was kind of, just something you learn, everyone learns as they go along and as you get more connected with others. So, and I guess that's pretty true just for Twitter. I don't know about Voxer for that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think as far as building the relationship, like I've got a couple of groups where we share direct messages, on Twitter, and there's like 4 or 5 people, and that feels a little more personal. Like it feels like a little bit safer there. We can kind of share whatever we want because we know sort of 1,000 other people aren't going to potentially chime in or judge, and so it's a little freer to sort of share ideas back and forth. And I think that would be the same with Voxer, and as I mentioned earlier, just smaller Voxer groups, just like any relationship over time, it allowed it to grow. And then if I have a specific questions on Voxer, I'll often reach out just to that person, and that's the one-on-one conversations. It seems to be most people in the physics community are really willing to help and offer support that way. But I've found that in the general sort of Twitter feed, it's a little more shallow, and maybe that's because I'm not quite brave enough to take a stand on certain things, or I just don't personally feel it's a good spot to attack people. But I do see that others trying to push the profession forward are doing what they think is best to challenge ideas. So I mean that's kind of what Sarah was talking about earlier. There's a gray area between challenging in an appropriate way, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't really see that challenging happening on Twitter very much at all, but I do see it happening on Facebook like all the time. And sometimes it's challenging and it's really murky, right? But I think the thing that has been so cool for me is that these relationships that I've gotten through Twitter have turned into real life relationships. I've traveled all over the country, and some of the Twitter people have been my roommates at a hotel, or I've visited their home. I've met their kids. We've gone on trips that, aren't necessarily PE related. So I think that's something that I never expected to ever happen. I think a lot of us probably didn't ever expect it to happen. And so when you go to a conference, you already know tons of people. And I kind of wonder what it feels like now to go to one of the bigger conventions and not be connected through Twitter. And like what that looks like, because I've been to the national convention, before Twitter was even a thing, where I was the only person I knew, and socializing and even walking into a session with 300 people was really difficult and challenging. I was also very young, and naive. So I just wonder, like, what does it feel like when you're like walking down those corridors in these huge convention centers and you see like 20 people running down the hallway, bombarding each other with these huge bear hugs? Because I think that is kind of noticeable sometimes. And I just wonder like what message that's sending and what those people feel like. I don't know.
So is there anything that makes you join a group in Voxer or follow somebody that, are there any sort of specific things you look for? Are you that deliberate in following someone, or do you just press the button and say, oh, they seem like a good guy, or a nice lady to follow? What goes on there?
Yeah, for me, I'm not, like I think Mike was saying, being really, really specific about who to follow, and I totally get it. And I think I haven't had that kind of a filter. And so I've sort of just, I'll generally follow everyone, but maybe not pay as close attention. So I think over time you figure out sort of who your trusted sources are as well. But then there's the other challenge of that is that potentially the reason I listen to those people more is because they agree with me, and then it becomes sort of an echo chamber type situation, and that's not necessarily good. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Sam, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, kind of with Twitter, I'm probably similar to Evan. I try to follow people, you know, that kind of have good insight or share their opinion. Sometimes it's in common with me and sometimes it's not. I think sometimes, kind of to what Evan was also saying, is following people who might have different viewpoints than you, because that's how I learn, to not surround myself with everyone who might have similar thoughts as me. I'd say for Voxer, kind of the way that I do things with Voxer is I follow chat groups based off of topics. So, for example, I kind of linger in the general PE one. I've kind of grown to the point where I don't necessarily always chime in, but I'm always kind of listening behind the scenes and taking bits and pieces from what people are sharing. And I think just kind of earlier, I didn't get a chance to share in on that one, but I think it's trying to find that work-life balance between all of these different tech tools that are out there for communication, but also making sure as a leader that I'm sharing with my staff the things that I feel would benefit their growth in the profession. And so that's kind of been more of my following within the Voxer community, is following, like I said, those different topics. Specifically, health is another big one, because here in Texas, they cut health as a requirement for graduation back in 2011. So I just realized from our health people that our textbooks are 21 years old and that we need to update those. But again, I'm following and keeping up within those different chat groups to stay abreast of all the new information that's out there to make a good choice for them.
So the last one, I'm going to skip one so we get the last one in, because we talked a little bit about challenges and what you can and can't say on Twitter. That might... I'll miss that one, but we might be able to come back to it. So how is professional learning via Twitter and Voxer different to what you or similar to what you experience in other areas of your work?
Okay, so I'll start that, if that's okay. For me, it's Twitter and Voxer make my professional learning community personalized. And when it's personalized, I feel like a lot of things can be accomplished. I fully embrace colleagues, obviously, that I work with, and when I worked in the school district or other colleagues. However, I do think that there's something to be said about seeking what you need and surrounding yourself by people with what you need and how you can grow in that sense. So I really enjoy the how it's personalized for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would say I like the fact that it's similar to going to a conference or a professional development session, but it almost feels like I have a one-on-one audience with the presenter, that I can, again, I have access to it. If I have a question, I can reach out directly to that person immediately, instead of like feeling like Colin was saying, I'm dealing with the people who want to take a picture with that person or who are rushing the stage afterwards. So I feel like I can kind of control the flow of information on my own time, which is a huge plus. Like I said, I can do it on my way to or from work. I can do it at night when I'm winding down. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Sam who mentioned earlier, I can kind of pick and choose what I want to get from it. If I don't want to spend too much time looking at something, I don't feel compelled to have to watch someone's entire video that they posted. I can kind of swipe and go as I choose. So I think just that personal ability to make it your own makes it better than all the other aspects of professional development that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with also with what Colin said. It's very personalized. I think for me, it's an opportunity to keep the conversation going. I was talking to a colleague the other day. You go to these conferences and they're great. You get ignited. You come back on fire. But then you're back to kind of your area of the world of where you have to go back and spread that. And so I think Twitter and Voxer allows you to continue to keep that conversation going, keep that fire burning. So that way you don't go to a conference, feel like you got a lot of really good ideas, and then you come back to reality and you can't implement those things. I think you surround yourself, again, with those professionals that are kind of on fire for the profession, share the same ambitions and goals, and you kind of just keep each other going, because sometimes you do run into barriers and walls within your own district where people tell you no, and they kind of call them the naysayers. But again, you surround yourself with this community that just offers support and love and respect for everything that you're doing. So you just keep those things going through the conversation with Twitter and Voxer.
Cool. So I think we've got 1 minute. So is there anything you can and can't say on Twitter? I mean, obviously, we're all in professional organizations. I think a lot of us are on Twitter professionally for the reasons we've described. So we're not, maybe sharing political views potentially, but I don't know. So how is that for yourselves? What do you share and what do you not share, Sarah?
I don't share on Twitter if I totally bomb a lesson. Instead, I might say like, hey, does anybody have advice on this activity or game? I instead tell Naomi Hartle or Colin or Matt or somebody in my Voxer circle that I bombed a lesson, because even though all teachers make mistakes, you never know how that could be construed by somebody outside of the phys ed world that also follows me, like the head of HR and my superintendent and the person who's in charge of our curriculum and everything, because I know that they would never misconstrue things because I trust them professionally, but it's 140 characters. And so you never know if the community would see something.
Probably one more, and then we'll have to wrap it up. So anyone got any thoughts about what you share and don't share?
I guess I would say that it's, I follow the same professionalism that I would with my colleagues at work, as far as what I say, and the way in which I say it, and I try to think just as like, kind of similar to what you would do if you were writing a professional email to someone. You take a moment and you read it again, type of thing.
Yeah, there is that kind of immediacy with Twitter, which is a benefit, but is also a bit of a challenge, because if you see something, I do the same. I see something where someone's trying to challenge an idea. There's been something going around on Twitter about something that myself and somebody else have written, and I've tried to avoid that debate because I don't want to have it on Twitter. You know what I mean? I'd rather have it somewhere else. So it's interesting. Colin, are we on time?
Yeah, I think that we've reached we're like a minute over or something, which is fine. But yeah, I think that's going to have to wrap up the group 1 session here. So I think it was an awesome conversation, and I'm glad we were all able to take part of it. And Tazel has been great. The back channel has been awesome today. There's so much conversation going on. So I personally want to say thank you. And, the panel, I'm sure you feel free to say something as well before we go here.
Colin, I just wanted to say thanks for inviting us in on this conversation. I think it's great to get perspective from different people from different parts of the world, with different kind of job experiences, with different responsibilities in terms of what they do for their job. So I think it was a great opportunity as a platform to share with all of the folks that you guys at Phys-Ed-Agogy got onto this professional development. And it was just a good opportunity to share kind of some things that we go through on a day-to-day basis.
And we have another session after this with a different group. So if the people in the room and people want to continue, we can continue the conversation on that tussle. And the conversation might go in a slightly different direction. So, we'd welcome, people to join us and keep stoking the fire, as Bob Knight would say.
Okay, I'll end this up. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this session of the Phys Ed Summit. I just want to remind you to, if you have an opportunity, fill out the feedback survey. Also, if you want to get involved and you haven't had an opportunity to speak about something on your mind, Flipgrid is another great opportunity for you to reflect and share your thoughts via video. You should definitely check that out. So that's a wrap. Hopefully, we'll see everyone in about 5 minutes for group 2. See you soon.